Horns up, this is Demonstealer, and you are listening to the Dan Chan Show.
Hey Sahil, how's things, my friend, in Mumbai?
Well, things are good here. I just got back from a vacation to Thailand and I'm ready to rock and roll, so to
Abs-
speak.
Absolutely. And that was a little cheeky holiday, wasn't it?
Yeah, wife has been wanting a vacation for a while, so we said, let's go.
Nice, nice. And we'll get into some details as well about your foodie stuff at the end as well, because I want to talk to you about that. But first off, you're here to talk about music, and you are releasing your brand new album, The Propaganda Machine, on March the 31st. The singles so far have been awesome. Are you looking forward to be finally getting this out?
Yes, I've been waiting to put this material out since about 2019. So yeah, finally happy to have it ready to go out to the public at the end of this month.
So tell me about the recording of the album and how long it's taken you. Was it a long process, or tell me about how you like to write and record?
Yeah, so I started writing this pretty much as soon as I released the previous album, which is The Last Reptilian Warrior, that came out in
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
And I started working on the album, but because when you're working on an album and you have so many musicians,
Mm.
more than anything, the coordination and availability of musicians takes a lot of time actually.
Yeah.
So I started working on the record in 2019. In fact, I think by 2019, the end, I had the first drummer locked in and I had his drum tracks as well. But it took me a really long time to lock in on all four drummers, then the four bass players, then Annabelle from, who was in Cradle of Filth and is in a band called
Yeah.
Veil. She messaged and said, I'd love to work together. And I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should put keys on this album because
Yeah.
there's a lot of potential there. So we started working together. And while all this was happening, most of my time was just basically waiting for emails to come in and someone
Mm.
to say, okay, look, I started working on the material and I'll give you a scratch track by,
Yeah.
3 weeks from now. And if you're okay with it, I'll go and record after 3 weeks. So I had a lot of free time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start writing another EP, which I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And for that EP as well, I started looking for different drummers, bass players. And once again, I was left waiting because I'm basically waiting on, schedules of touring musicians. Plus, the pandemic really upturned a lot of musicians' lives. So some of
Mm.
them were like trying to set up their studios at home and, they were waiting on equipment. Plus people had personal things. So I was like, this EP is taking too long. So I'm going to write another EP. And that's actually how my 2020 EP came about, which I basically did in 2 months. I
Yeah.
think I started in like June and I was done by July, August, and then we put it out in December. And then
Mm.
finally the next EP, which was also in the works, got done, and that came out in 2021.
Yeah.
And then last year I managed to finally record the final guitars for this, get all the other stuff together, and we are able to put it out now at the end of the month. So it's just, been a lot of waiting.
Would you say that's one of the problems with being like a solo artist, when you're having to do the admin and wait for people to finish doing their tours or cycles and things like that to get the right people on board? I mean, that must be a problem, right? For to get everything in place.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like, I guess for any band that is DIY, you always have to wait on people, whether it's, with
Yeah.
your own bandmates having to find out when they're free, then to figure out who's mixing your album. Is the studio free? Do they have the dates for you? Who's doing the artwork? And
Yeah.
a lot of bands, there is one person at the driving, at the wheel,
Of
so
course.
it's often, and that's something I've been doing for like 20 years now. So I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I also took a very relaxed approach because my whole relationship with music has been a bit dicey for the last 5 years. Because like in 2018, I kind of figured I was going to hang up my boots with Demonic Resurrection because I was just so
Yeah.
frustrated with the struggle of being an independent musician. And then kind of the pandemic hit and gave me like a sort of kick in the nuts saying, look, man, you're a
Mm.
privileged guy. The pandemic has affected so many people and you have the privilege to actually sit at home, not worry about your next meal. You have a roof over your head. You actually can go to your studio and put out music. So I was just like I got a bit of a kick in the butt, and I started being a little more proactive with the music. So I went into the last three releases with quite a relaxed mindset. Like
Yeah.
normally, like if the album wasn't getting done on time, you start to send stinkers to your musician friends and be like, "Hey guys, you're taking too long." But I was like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna wait. Let them do it in their own time. They'll do a better job.
Yeah.
They'll be more relaxed." I just let it happen in the natural way it would.
Yeah. Because you've got some awesome talent on this album, haven't you? Some awesome talent.
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. And since the whole plan was to basically put this out DIY at my own pace, I didn't have a record label breathing down my neck saying,
Yeah.
"Where's the
Yeah.
masters? I need to put it out."
Of course. Now, what themes are you writing about? I know you're very anti-religious. I mean, what your themes are going through the album, and have you ever had any backlash in India regarding your views and themes that you write about?
Okay, yeah. So, sorry, to answer that in two parts. Yes, I am very against religion. I'm quite
Same. So am I.
I quite despise religion. Yeah, but I think the lyrics on this album in particular are largely political,
Right.
very sort of inspired by the events that have been going on in the world
So
over the last,
it's a world view, not just a local view. Then.
no, I mean, obviously the local stuff has a bigger impact on me, but what happens here is also kind of, I see the same stuff happening all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
Um,
course.
just to give you an example, if you're thinking like a simple thing like, people protesting for the right to just have equality, to, have certain freedoms. And you see the sort of right wing governments and all this
Mm,
sort of turn protesters into these sort of villains, and they make
yeah. Yeah.
themselves out to be the victims. If there are a couple
Mm,
of lines in the album, turn the victims into perpetrators.
yeah.
That's just like flipping the switch, and they use, things like WhatsApp and social media to feed propaganda to people, doctoring, videos and just sending things out. Like in India, the government literally has a WhatsApp cell with like hundreds of employees. Literally, the only job is to spread propaganda through like a medium like WhatsApp and Facebook and stuff
Mm,
like that.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is something world over. I mean, I remember when I was in the UK during Brexit.
Mm,
So these things have been hitting me right since then. The whole like all the Nigel Farage and all were making all these
yeah.
promises of what
Yeah.
Brexit would do, and then at the end of
Yeah.
it, everyone's like, "Yeah, where's all that stuff?" And
Yeah.
none of it
Yeah.
was there.
I know.
So all
Disaster.
these things. Yeah. So like, even though I live in India and there's a lot of stuff happening here that inspires me, I just see the same stuff. Whether it's in America with the whole Trump thing, the Black Lives Matter protests, or whether it's the Russia-Ukraine war, or whether it was
Mm,
Brexit and the things that followed after that. All of that stuff kind of uh, influences is because it's one thing on top of the other year after year. It's like it's just an unrelenting surge of like crazy things that are happening. So I think
yeah.
all of that I just channeled into the sort of theme on this album in particular.
Yeah.
Um, Now, to answer the second part about backlash in India, largely no, because metal is a very niche genre. The people that
Mm,
listen and play music like metal are very privileged people in society, myself
yeah.
included,
Yeah.
um, because of various, economic and social factors. So
I understand. Yeah.
it's not big enough to really sort of trouble anyone, because like I said, very, very niche. So it doesn't do anything for political and religious groups to target
Of course.
nobodies,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, like you can see the film industry in India, Bollywood has been like under major attack from like right wing and religious groups. Why?
Really.
Because there was a recent movie came out of one of the biggest superstars in the country. uh, Quality of the content aside, there was a simple thing of the actor is a Muslim and the actress is a Hindu, and
Right.
there was some raunchy dance video where she wore a saffron bikini,
Right.
and they turned that whole thing into like a full political thing. How dare she wear saffron and make those moves? And you've got this Muslim man oppressing a Hindu girl. Like none
Mm,
of this stuff is part of it, but they do it because obviously when you target big celebrities, you
mm,
get coverage, and it just feeds their propaganda basically.
yeah.
And
I
it
understand.
literally went to the point where the filmmakers cut out a simple dance sequence because of this crazy stuff, because they were burning posters and all outside movie
Yeah.
theaters and stuff. So
Yeah.
for if they targeted me as a metal musician, yeah, I'm not really going to get much out of it publicity wise. However, having said that, tomorrow if there is somebody in the vicinity who's in cahoots with the right wing extremist parties or any of the groups, And if they did find my stuff and they did want to sort of create a thing, like I could be in like literal physical danger. Like in 2015, I put out a song called Genocidal Leaders, and my artwork was a little risky with a
Yeah.
few pictures of a few people, and I got messages from concerned people saying, hey, like all is good, but maybe you want to like take out these few photos from it. And even I used to rant a lot on Facebook about political stuff,
Mm.
and people, again, nothing really happened to me because again, I'm in Bombay. I'm a sort of privileged person, so I
Yeah.
generally won't deal with the stuff. But I constantly got messages, hey man, maybe you want to tone it down, maybe you should go a little less harsh with your words and stuff like that. And even on Twitter, I actually found somebody had like taken one of my Facebook posts, screenshotted it, and tried to tag like the prime minister of the country and stuff.
Jeez. Wow.
So I mean, nothing comes of it because again, I'm not really anybody of importance. But at the end of the day, you can always be sort of on the receiving end of things
Yeah,
if
of
you rub
course.
somebody the wrong way.
Right. So you are the keystone to the genre in your country, India. You set up a label, a studio, festival organizer, and being from one of the biggest Indian metal bands, Demonic Resurrection. Where did this all begin? Was there a gap in the market that you felt you had to step in and sort out? And is it safe to say that you wrote the script for the Indian metal scene?
Well, I think you're being too kind and generous in your choice of
Come
words.
on.
I
You're very,
don't,
you're very involved. Come on, tell me all about it.
yeah, so I was definitely involved, and the thing is, the Indian metal scene really it was not much to begin with when I joined in. Most bands were playing cover music. There was obviously no infrastructure, and like I said, the people who listen to this music come from a rather privileged background, but
Yeah.
it's largely a college kid phase in India. So most of your
Yeah.
audience is between 16 to like 22, 23.
Yeah.
So they don't really have disposable income. They kind of grow out of the music. And with
Mm.
bands not really playing original material, there's very limited scope for an industry to actually exist.
Yeah.
And this was true for basically all music that wasn't pop music or Bollywood. So the entire scene basically had no labels, no sort of proper promoters. There were like a few venues here and there that allowed quote unquote live music, basically. And that's kind of where we started. So for me, it was like, okay, I want to put out my music. Where do I record? Well, the only options are the studios that are recording big budget projects that are going to cost me an arm and a leg, which as a 16-year-old I can't
Yeah.
afford.
Yeah.
So I got to learn how to record at home. So I start my studio. I want to play a show. Well, I have to go and communicate with the pub personally, and then I have to connect with bands who are willing to play along with us. And then next thing you know, I'm a promoter. And well, I need to put out a CD, so there's no record label that's gonna, pick up a death metal album that'll sell maybe 200 copies. So I guess I'm putting it out myself. And eventually, I started to make these things sort of a little more professional. So that's kind of why I got involved in things. And over time, as some of the sort of avenues filled up with people who were more into that and had more time to dedicate it to it, and when the industry sort of grew, I was able to step back and say, okay, now let the people who really want to do this handle it. So it's still at a very nascent stage, but at least there's a lot more than where we were 20 years ago.
Hmm. I understand. So what's the scene like in India now? Is metal widely accepted, and does everyone know each other in the scene?
Well, the scene is small and most people do know each other, but it's still largely limited to a very niche audience. There is only one like full blown proper open air metal festival in the country that pulls in about 1,500 to 2,000 people.
Right.
But now bands are able to sort of do a few more cities when they tour as opposed to earlier. There are definitely more bands than there were before. There's definitely a lot more music being created and put out. And there are a lot more Indian bands now touring abroad and sort of creating a name for themselves, be it through
Mm.
the, sort of bigger
Yeah.
bands like Cryptos who are signed to a sort of much well-known label like AFM Records,
Mm.
or it's the smaller bands that are signed to slightly more obscure labels in Germany and stuff. But they all exist now, which wasn't the case, many years ago.
Yeah. And I mean, is it all geographically located around Mumbai, or is it spread out? Because it's a huge country.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. The how vast the country is kind of what makes it very spread out. So most of the concert going and everything is restricted to the major cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, Calcutta, Guwahati, a few more, and then there are like tier two and tier three cities, and then there are even smaller than that, and those cities don't really have a concert going culture, let alone a metal culture there. There may be metalheads there, but there's nothing really happening there for them, apart
Yeah,
from being able to listen to music because of the internet and stuff like that.
I
So
understand.
it's still developing, but it's a little better than before, but it's going to take a lot more time.
Yeah. Now, I believe going back in time to a little Sahil, I believe Maiden got you into metal. How did you first hear of them? And was it easy to access this kind of music in India? And from there, how did you progress to, say, heavier bands?
Yeah. So I think the mainstream bands were always available in India. So, Metallica, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest,
Yeah.
Black Sabbath, because we had all the rock stuff here in India as well, Deep Purple,
Yeah.
Aerosmith, U2.
Yeah.
Um, the British obviously left a big
Yeah.
impact when they left us. So there's always been like a live music scene. My mom used to tell me they used to go to the discotheque and dance to like uh, all English music basically.
Right.
So my mom used to collect LPs. She had a lot of soul music, a lot of pop music, Duran Duran, Depeche Mode. In fact, she told me about Inagada da Vida by Iron Butterfly. She's like, that's the only heavy metal song I like.
Wow.
So the music was definitely accessible. There were record stores. Obviously, the obscure metal stuff never really got here, but you
No.
would find these uh, they were like smugglers, we would call them, because I think they got like pirated CDs from different spots,
Right.
and you could find a Testament or a Napalm Death or a Pantera in one of these places.
Yeah.
So it was easy to access. So I got to listen to Iron Maiden through a friend whose brother was into heavy metal, and he gave him the cassette. But after I actually listened to metal, I didn't really dive into Sorry, after I listened to Maiden, I didn't really dive into metal much at that point. It was only like a year or two later that I sort of dived back in when my friends gave me some more stuff like
Yeah.
Metallica, and I think at that point they may have given me maybe Sepultura or Pantera or something. And then I started diving into like Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie, and then I went down the black metal rabbit hole and death metal and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. What newer bands are floating your boat at the moment?
Oh, right now I'm on a complete tech debt trip, and I'm listening to a lot of Obscura,
Yeah.
Archfire, Inferi. There are a whole bunch of bands. I mean, I could just go on listing them out. My Spotify playlist has
Yeah.
like a gazillion of them.
Yeah. 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 So what's happening live wise this year? What's on the horizon? And you play shows in India. I mean, you've been outside of India. You played at Wacken and all different places. So what's happening this year?
So for me, I've kind of taken my foot off the gas when it comes to live music, because for first of all, for Demonstealer, well, just putting together a lineup that can
Yeah, I was
actually
gonna say
perform the
who's in
material.
your band? Yeah, you need to get a band together.
Yeah. So Demonstealer is a studio only project. It's gonna take a lot of money uh, to actually put that out on the road, and I don't think I'm at a point where I would be able to sort of warrant that kind of expense. So
Yeah.
maybe 5-10 years down the line, if Demonstealer ever jumps, and becomes one of the bigger metal bands, maybe something could happen. For Demonic Resurrection, we don't have a complete lineup yet, because we had like a big lineup change after the last album, and I was
Yeah.
working with session musicians and rotating band members to kind of do the last few tours. And honestly, just booking a tour today is really, really difficult unless you are a big famous band.
Yeah.
And as an independent artist, most of the tour offers that come to open for bigger bands
Yeah.
is basically like, yeah, you need 10-15,000 euros just to buy onto that tour.
Yeah.
And if you want to put together your own tour, just finding a booking agent has been a nightmare for me personally. So I've reached a point where the joy has been completely sucked out of it. So
I
I'm just
understand.
gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna relax till the band has something going, and I can actually do it with a little less stress, because
Mm,
what's the point if you're not enjoying what you do, right?
of course. What's happening to a demonic resurrection at the moment? What's happening with them?
Well, Demonic Resurrection, we did put out 4 new songs last year. We actually
Yeah.
collaborated with a a bunch of talented musicians. We got David Dipole from Obscura and
Yeah.
Kevin Paradis from United to drum on two songs each.
Yeah. So
There's this amazing keyboard player called Mystique from Australia. She's with a band called Earthcrawler, and she's also like a viral sensation because she does symphonic sort of versions of deathcore and popular metal songs.
right.
And I just hit her up to do keys on the songs, and she did an incredible job. So we put that out last year, and maybe this year we'll start writing some new material because it's me, our original drummer, still in the band, but he was busy with session work earlier,
Yeah.
and the new lead guitarist. So we'll probably put something together and see where we go from there.
Nice. Nice. Now, I think I read it on Vice News when you did an article on Vice News. You tell me about one of these early shows from a Battle of the Bands where I believe you faced quite a hostile crowd. Was it because the crowd weren't into the metal or they just didn't like your music?
Well, I think it was a mix of many things. So, I mean, it depends on which hostile show you're talking about. So,
There's more. Okay. I read one, I'm
oh,
sure it
yeah,
was on Vice News, where you got things thrown at you and it was a difficult crowd to manage.
again, which one?
I don't know. Okay, tell me your favorite one of those.
I'll very briefly sum up three of them, which sort of goes across three eras of the band.
Go
So
on.
the first one was 2002 when we were just starting out. This is when most Indian metal bands played cover songs, and they very apologetically would throw in one or two
Ah,
originals. And we played at one of the biggest concerts in the city at that point, which had the most rowdy crowd. And they were there to listen to their favorite Sabbath, Maiden, Metallica, Sepultura songs. They had no patience, and they were probably drunk out of their heads. So we hit the stage. We played our own music. We were not even a very good band because we were like 2 years old. And so the combination of not playing any popular songs, the combination of probably not being a great live act, and the general atmosphere led to us getting a lot of booze and some paper cups and all thrown at us. That was the first one. Not too violent, not too bad, you know. It got really bad in 2006 when it was really same festival, same crowd wanting, popular covers. But this time we were a good band, so I know we put up a good show, but the crowd just didn't want to hear extreme metal with blast beats and stuff. And this time, the same festival is taking place on a ground that had mud and pebbles.
right.
So we got pebbles thrown at us. Uh, cigarette butts were launched at the stage, and during one of the songs, a stone landed in between the keys of the keyboard during this part where the keyboard player had to play, and he was basically skipping a note because the key was stuck.
Shit. Oh my God. No, how do you, how do you
And the
handle,
last,
how do you handle that kind of thing? You know?
you just run around the stage and just hope your cable is long enough. The keyboard is suffered because the keyboardist was
You
stuck
can't
at his
move.
keyboard, so
Yeah.
he could only move his head a little bit. So he did actually get hit on the head, and he had a little bump after the show. Um, so yeah,
But yeah, you
that
got
was
another
that.
one. What's your third one?
The third one was actually the one that hurt the most because we had just won the Metal Hammer Golden God Award in the UK. We were on a high. We came back to India and we were playing at the Rolling Stone Metal Awards where we again had won. We ended up winning, I think, most of the awards. But one of the rival bands, extremely hardcore fan base, actually started creating trouble while we were playing, and they were basically just pushing our fans around and just creating an all round scene and booing us and stuff. So that was very disheartening. And it
Yeah,
was
I
just
bet.
like a few fringe elements. And the funny thing is, the band that they supported were like ex members of Demonic Resurrection, who we
Huh.
really had no beef with at that point, you
Nah.
know?
Weird. Weird.
Yeah.
So if
So
you
those are the three different ones.
Yeah, wow. Some history. Right, so from extreme metal to food, one of my favorite things. Now, you've got books out on food, you've got your Headbangers Kitchen, you've got Headbangers Eats on Instagram. Are you a chef or is it a fascination with food? What is it?
Okay, so I actually wanted to be a chef before I wanted to be a musician because I love food and I discovered a love for cooking quite early on in life when I was about 11 or 12. But I sort of strayed away from that path when I discovered first a love for computers, which then turned into a love for heavy metal, and then cooking as a career option went out the window.
Hmm.
But food is something that you don't really get rid of from your life because you have to eat.
Mm.
So I've always been cooking, and even when I was, organizing concerts and things like that, bands would always stay at my house, and I would feed them breakfast and stuff. And I actually got pretty well known for my omelets.
Mm.
So I had a bit of a reputation for cooking. And I think once Facebook started and I had my first camera phone, I just started posting like my dinner once in a while. I take a picture, oh, this chicken dish looks good, let's post it online. And I really thought nothing of it.
Mm.
But around 2009 or so, YouTube started to get really popular in India. And I was watching a lot of cooking on YouTube. And at that point, I think there was this channel called Epic Mealtime that was doing these really insane food things. Like they take a chicken and they put the chicken in a duck and the duck in a
All
turkey and
right.
the
Yeah.
turkey in a
Yeah.
pig, and they wrap it in bacon and they cook it. And then there was this American barbecue channel that did like, full roast pig and like a whole bunch of cool stuff. So I got really excited watching all this. And when Demonic Resurrection did our first music video, I just asked the director very casually, saying, I've been doing these sort of cooking blogs on Facebook. I was thinking, what if we filmed it and put it on YouTube, just for fun? And he's
Yeah.
like, I'm happy to film it for you, but like, let's do something a little more interesting. So I was like, okay, maybe I can have a band come and taste the food, and then, I can make the dish
Yeah.
named after the band or something, and I'll interview them. And we came up with Headbangers Kitchen. Um, Fast forward 5 years later, I interviewed some of the biggest bands like Lamb of God, Gojira, etc., etc.
Hmm.
But the channel didn't really go anywhere. I think we had about 4,000, 5,000 subscribers. Videos would get 2,000, 3,000 views, and it was a lot of work for not much return.
Yeah.
So I was like, look, this is taking too much of my time. I'd rather focus on doing more music. So I'm going to shoot videos when I have time with one camera on my own.
Yeah.
And I did that. I was doing the keto diet in 2016. And when I made pizza out of cauliflower, I was like, I got to film this and put it up.
Yeah.
And I think, again, there was a gap in the market for good keto cooking
Yeah.
videos. And my channel
I've done keto
just
a few times.
exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my channel exploded. I was suddenly making a living out of doing YouTube videos, so I quit my job, and things like book offers and stuff came in, and I just I rolled with it, and that's how we are here today.
Amazing. Amazing. So I'm going to ask this question. What would your last meal be? What's your favorite dish?
Oh, this is a tough one. How many dishes can I include?
Well, you can have a starter, a main course, and a dessert.
All right. So for my starter, I would have a portion of roast duck in brown sauce with rice.
Nice.
For my main, I would have an assorted collection of steaks along
Yeah.
with triple cooked potatoes.
Sounds good. Right on my street. Yeah.
And for dessert, I would have a tiramisu.
Nice. That sounds like something I'd eat, to be honest with you, Sahil. So obviously you've been to the UK. Have you eaten in an Indian restaurant in the UK? Because everyone says it's nothing like the curry you'd say you get in, Mumbai. Because
Yes, it is
the
nothing.
tikka masala is a British dish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You guys have basically made your own Indian
Oh,
food,
yeah,
which is
yeah, yeah.
totally different.
I like it. I love it. It's my
But
favorite cuisine, but I've never had traditional Indian.
yeah, this is literally what all the Brits tell me when I meet them. It's like, yeah, we love a good curry. We love a jalfrezi and a vindaloo, and the
Yeah,
hotter the better. And I'm like, yeah, but that's nothing like what you get in India. So
yeah.
I avoid Indian food like the plague anywhere outside India and in India as well, because I'm just I like it when I make it, but I just don't really like eating it outside because it's either too spicy or I'd just rather eat something else.
Yeah, I
So I
understand.
did get taken to a curry house with some friends once, and I did have a taste. I mean, look, it's unique and interesting on its own. So it's not like it's good food at the end of the day,
Yeah, it
but
is.
it's
It is
not
good
it's
food.
not like what you would get in India.
Of
And
course.
also, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that your onions, your tomato, your garlic, and your ginger and your coriander all taste very different
Right.
from what you get in India. Like the
Interesting.
produce tastes different, so even the curries end up kind of tasting different.
Interesting. Now, I just want to touch back on something you mentioned about when you were in the UK, the Metal Hammer Awards. What was it like getting an accolade from, an international magazine? When you first started in India, I bet you didn't expect such a thing to be so international. How did it feel?
it was surreal. It was like a dream because we basically got the call from one of the guys in the local music scene who kind of at that point was the leading artist manager, record label, head honcho of everything basically in the independent scene. And he just called us to like a, a place near my house, like a shady bar, and he's like, "Listen, guys, Metal Hammer is giving you an award." And I'm just like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, listen, you need to book your tickets now. You got to go in like 10 days and you need to apply for your visa in like 2 days." And we're just like, "What?" And the whole trip was just surreal because I think that was also my first trip to the UK. In fact, that was my like second visit to anywhere in Europe,
Wow.
probably. I don't think I've been prior to that, I really hadn't been to any other place other than Dubai, I think.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, wow, it's like this is a great place to be. And I was wearing a leather jacket that I'd never worn before, like, because it's too hot in
Hot.
Bombay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, and we're at backstage at this insane event, and there's like Tony Iommi there, and there's like Silinos from Dimmu Borgir, and
Yeah.
there's Abbat having drinks at the bar, who we later found
Wow.
passed out at the bar, and we were just, it was just unreal. Like it was
Amazing.
like a kid in the candy shop.
Amazing. Can you give me one track that sums up your repertoire the best? You know, that one go-to track that you would lead people to, say, if they didn't know what you did. What track would it be? Because I'm going to play it next.
Oh wow, this is a really hard one. Oh man, this is interesting. Oh, huh, wow, this I did not anticipate this question.
No one does.
One song to,
Yeah,
yeah,
an
you know
alien
what?
comes down to Earth and they say, "What do you do, Sahil?" You say, "I'm going to play this track," and it says everything.
Well, I normally play this track because I think it has the best balance of the emotional side of my solo material as well as the brutal side. So I would say From Flesh to Ashes is what I would play for people from my 2020 EP
Yeah.
and This Too Shall Pass.
Okay, cool. That's going to come up next. And finally, Sahil, what's the most used emoji in your phone?
The crying laughy emoji.
Sahil, thanks so much for the chat this evening. I really appreciate it. Good luck with 2023 and hope to speak to you again in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.